Read books from women and non-binary authors. Read books from people who are not white. Read books from people who are not from the United States, the United Kingdom, or Canada. Read books from people who are not straight or cisgender. These are things we should all do in an attempt to increase diversity and representation in books, because we need that. That being said, one of my favorite authors is an old straight white guy from the UK named Terry Pratchett. He does write a sub-series of his Discworld series about Tiffany Aching, who is a remarkable witch of Discworld, and the last book he wrote before he died was The Shepherd's Crown, one last story about her and about all the witches of the Discworld, really. And I wanted to make a video talking about it because I just finished reading it. See? Happy Monday, Paul Talkers and other viewers. I am not a booktuber, but the Discworld is a geeky topic, right? It's fantastical. So this is still on brand for me. I suppose that before I get started, I should tell you whether or not there are going to be any spoilers in this video. I'm going to try to avoid that, but I should also define what I think of as a spoiler. I think that a spoiler is a fact about the story that reveals a plot development. Something that is not talked about in the summary, the blurb, or the trailer for the story, if it's a movie. I mean, blurbs, summaries, and trailers sometimes do contain spoilers, but that's not my fault. For example, here's a spoiler about the original Star Wars trilogy. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. That was a spoiler. This is a fact about Star Wars that I think is not a spoiler. Han Solo flies the Millennium Falcon. Not a spoiler. The Wookiee's name is Chewbacca. Not a spoiler. Okay? So I knew going into the story that Granny Weatherwax dies right at the beginning. Whew, that's rough. I've been reading the Discworld series since I was in, I think, junior high school, or maybe even elementary school, and Granny Weatherwax was introduced early on, so that's most of my life. I've known her most of my life. Sure, as a fictitious character, but still. I did like seeing all the other characters react to her death. I mean, it made me cry. Everything makes me cry. It was really neat to see how many lives Granny Weatherwax had affected. But the plot of The Shepherd's Crown isn't really about that. It's really about the fact that because Granny Weatherwax was no longer protecting the Discworld, that opened the way for invaders from fairy lands to come in and attack. And seeing how all the witches of the Discworld respond to that. This felt like a reunion story because we got to see so many cameo appearances from characters of volumes past. Characters that I hadn't thought about in years. And it was really kind of wonderful. I liked that so much. I was nervous that one character, Jeffrey, was introduced as a way of pulling focus away from the women of the story to a male in the story. And if you're a feminist who's read the story, please chime in and let me know your thoughts. But I don't think that happened. I think what we saw instead was a way of taking a male space and introducing more respect for women into that space, which is good, as opposed to what I feared, which was that men would just invade a woman's space. In recent years, I've looked at the fantasy and science fiction stories that I've read with a different eye and seen that there's a lot of gender essentialism and gender conformity and outright sexism in so many of these stories. And so I've been nervous that I would see that in Terry Pratchett's stories as well, especially going back and rereading them. I think that he actually tries to challenge that. Admittedly, some characters in his stories are definitely sexist and or all about gender conformity, but those are the characters that we like fight against and oppose. That's what I want to see. And in The Shepherd's Crown, I feel like there was even a suggestion of non-binary gender, which is amazing and great. I might be reading too much into that, but I'm hopeful. The crux of the story is definitely around Tiffany Aching. She is a remarkable Witch of Discworld. Maybe their most remarkable ever, or second most? When I was first introduced to the Witches of Discworld, I wasn't sure if they had actual supernatural magic abilities, or if it was all headology, as Granny Weatherwax put it. They definitely have some powerful magic, and it usually takes the form of something elemental. They work with water and fire and metal and stone. But that's not the source of their power. My interpretation is that the source of the power for witches comes from two things. One, they care about people, and two, they believe in themselves. How amazing is that? That the witches are magic because of that. Because of empathy and confidence. And all witches have that, but Tiffany Aching has that the most. There's definitely humor and action and conflict in this story, and it's all really, really great, but I don't want to give away the story. So let me just bring up one more aspect of this story, and in fact the entire Discworld series. Another reviewer wrote this, I'm sorry I can't remember who it was. All the characters in the Discworld books, if you give them enough time, become interesting characters with whom we can sympathize. And I think that says a lot about how Terry Pratchett views the world. The longer he went on, the more he cared about everyone. The more he expanded his worldview to care about more people, including expanding the definition of what makes a person. In the Discworld, ogres and trolls and golems and even vampires and goblins eventually became people and not others. And the fact that we've been able to see that happen over 40 plus books is so wonderful. It actually reminds me of a line from the current TV show Girl Meets World. Corey says this as a teacher. He says, "The secret of the universe is people change people." Maybe it's silly for me to put so much stock into a line from a kids show, but it's a really good kids show. And if you take that idea and you combine it with empathy, then you get people keep getting better. And that is true in The Shepherd's Crown as well. We see redemption for a couple of characters. It doesn't necessarily come in the way that you expect, but it's kind of great, and it gives me hope. I suppose I should give you an evaluation of the story, but I don't like rating systems. I don't like giving stars or numbers to stories because that's so quantitative, and my feels are all about qualitative. So I can tell you this. I loved this book. It was not necessarily the best Discworld book or Terry Pratchett book, but I loved it because it had characters in it who I loved. And the things that happened to them were pretty much the things I wanted to have happen to them. A really nice goodbye story. And I think it made me a better person. So I loved it. And I love Tiffany Aching. And I love Terry Pratchett. So if you like the Discworld books, or Tiffany Aching, or Terry Pratchett, then I think you might also like The Shepherd's Crown. But you don't have to take my word for it. How do I end a book review video? If you've read the book, or you want to read the book, let me know in the comments below. If you have a take on it, please let us know. If you're gonna spoil something, maybe start off your comment with spoiler, or tell me anything that matters to you, because I want to know what matters to you. If you like this book review video of mine, please give me a thumbs up. That will help my video get more exposure. Or you can just do that directly and share my video wherever you like to share it. That would be great. If you want to hear more of me talking about stuff, please subscribe if you have not yet subscribed. In the comments on my last video, Kat Wilhite, I think that's how you pronounce your last name, asked if I had paid any attention to the Dear Fat People thing going on the internet. Yes, I was aware of that. However, I don't think that I need to make a video to give my opinion on the topic. That would feel like just jumping on a bandwagon, which I don't need to do. Instead, I will direct you to Megan Tonja's and Grace Helbig's videos. I'll link to them in the description. Watch what they have to say. I pretty much agree with them. I am definitely not on Nicole Arbour's side of this situation. Nope. Thank you for watching all the way to the end of my video. This is where I always say, tomorrow will be even better.